Welcome, everyone, to the She Reads podcast, where we present and promote books written by women authors. Please click below to subscribe to our channel and watch this episode and others that I have done. Today on our podcast, we have the pleasure of introducing Christina Vitagliano, author of Every 9 Minutes. Christina Vitagliano is the founder of Monster Mini Golf, a nationwide franchise of indoor, glow-in-the-dark mini golf and family entertainment centers. Christina initially created Monster Mini Golf to raise funds needed to edit a memoir she wrote about her life. Now she has over 30 locations across the US and Canada. Christina is also the author of her 2 books, Gene Simmons is a Powerful and Attractive Man and Other Irrefutable Facts, and our book that we'll be discussing today, Every 9 Minutes. Christina currently resides in Las Vegas with her husband, Patrick, 2 bulldogs, and 1 African gray rescue parrot. Christina wants readers to remember this is the first step towards change, and that the first step towards change is awareness. Thank you, Christina, so much for joining us today. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your book. You have it in the background, and of course I have my copy here. But if you could, just tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. It's a memoir, so obviously true story in my life. And it spans about 30 years. It starts when I'm 4 years old and it ends when I turn around 30, so a little less than 30 years. But it was important to me to not only obviously, I think everybody's aware of child abuse. Nobody wants to talk about it or deal with it, but people are aware of it. But we see a lot of books written about the actual experiences and dealing with those experiences. To me, because my experience lasted so many years, it was important to show how you deal with it as a 4 and 5-year-old child, how it's different as you become, 10, 11, 12 years old. And then when you're in your teens, it's completely different. And it's just extremely important because your life, changes so much and you have to adapt to all of that.
Definitely. And I think that was great that you started out the book at the age of 4. I know it's really hard to, even for myself, to remember things that, happened. And when people ask, I'm like, well, it might have been somewhere between 4 and 5, but I'm not, really sure. But it really does kind of set you up in a sense for, I think, how you develop friendships, how you make friends, how you have relationships and things like that. Because at that age, when you have no boundaries, or when the boundaries are taken away and people overstep them, then it's like you don't know kind of how to have boundaries with your friends. And you don't always learn what's appropriate when you're with your friends to talk about and to hang out and to say, and what's not appropriate, because the things you learned seemed appropriate, and to everybody else, well, that's definitely not something that was appropriate.
Yeah. And I think a lot of children that have been abused, and as you grow up, you kind of things go in extremes. So you either go one way or the other. And that was a good point. So with me, I didn't talk about it at all. Never. I didn't want anybody to ever know there was anything, quote unquote, wrong with me. Where a lot of folks go the other way, and it becomes like they just have to talk about it all the time because that's the only way they can probably survive. So it hits everybody very differently.
What do you hope to achieve by writing this?
I think you when you opened it with, I just want to make people more aware of. I don't know why we talk about everything in this day and age, and everybody stands up. I think this generation is probably more outspoken than anybody has been in a very, very long time. I think a lot of us were raised to anything that was you didn't want to talk about, people didn't want to hear about, you kind of put under the rug, But this generation, they speak up about everything, whether they should or shouldn't sometimes, but they're very vocal about it, but not this. So I think it's interesting that, here's these people yelling and screaming about everything that shouldn't be. As soon as you mention this subject, they all scatter.
And it gets very quiet.
And get very quiet. Yeah, because nobody knows how to talk about it. And I think the people that have been through it, obviously, some of us can, some of us never will, and that's okay. But I got to the point where I could. And if we can just make well, two things. One, make people more aware that not only is it happening, it's probably happening so much more than they know. The reason it's titled Every 9 Minutes is because every 9 minutes is a case of child abuse reported in the USA. That's reported. Now, I never reported mine, and I'll bet you 80 to 90% of us do not report it.
Correct.
And that's a scary fact when that's happening, and they every 9 minutes for what we know. So it's just important for people to say, hey, we need to deal with this and hold some people accountable, which we don't seem to really do that either. And also, if somebody else reads this book, whether it's one person, 10, or I don't know how many, but to me, it was hard that once I finished writing it, I sat on it for 20 years and didn't do anything about it. I tried to get it published, but then I would, use every excuse in the world why it was still sitting on my desk. So I think I was still, I didn't have the courage to share it with the world. And then when COVID hit, I think everybody sat down and kind of caught their breath for a bit. And I said, well, it's time to publish this book. And I remember when, it actually went live the first day, I was terrified. But when the first person messaged me or emailed me and said, thank you for writing it, you've actually helped me in whatever way, that was good. It didn't matter to me if everybody in the world read it and I was embarrassed. I don't care. It's not about that.
Did you have any struggles when you were writing your book?
Yeah. A couple of things. It was struggles, and there were some, actually, I nobody says it must be therapy. It actually is therapy. As I was writing it, and you would go through, I'm going through whatever, year, I'm 10 years old. As I got a little bit older, when I got in my teens, my 20s, I would write in my head, this is what happened, whatever, that day, or, where I was going through. And then I would realize, as I'm writing about myself, what an idiot I was, And I'm like, why would I do something like that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of? But I did it. And then, I'd be another 3 or 4 chapters later, and I'd be doing it again. Maybe not exactly the same, but doing the same thing. And I thought to myself, Jesus, how did I not see this then? But you don't. You're just trying to survive,
Yes.
So it was very educational. Yeah.
And it's things that people do when they're in survival mode. Like I look
Yes.
back on some things that I did. I was just talking to my sister the other day, and I kind of said the same thing. Like, God, I can't believe that I did all these things. And then I patted myself on the back and said, I got to get away with it. Nobody
Yep.
found out that the real reason this was happening was because of A, B, and C. And I still covered
Yeah.
up my bases. And so no one saw anything out of the ordinary. And she said, but you were in survival mode. And that's like what you do to continue on to the next day. And it really is true.
Yeah. And I think, people use the word that we're all survivors, and not that that's a bad word, because, we're out here, we're living, we're breathing, but that's literally what it is. You're surviving at that point. You're just breathing, and you're just going from day to day. And that's not healthy for most of us. We don't want to be just survivors. You want to actually feel like you're normal and feel like you're thriving and not surviving. Because somebody that survived a car accident that's hooked up on every tube there is surviving, but most people don't want to live like that.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of get past all of that controlling us in its own way, and knowing when it's doing that, and mind over matter, and saying, look, I'm going to take control of this. That's hard to do.
Yeah, definitely. I totally understand that. Growing up, you had to move around a lot, make friends, like you suddenly make friends, get comfortable in the school, and then suddenly that was kind of all taken away. What was that like for you, having to start over all the time?
It was horrible. It was exactly that. Every time you would make friends and you'd start to say, okay, I feel a little comfortable, this is kind of cool, they would up and move again. And it's hard to feel like you're okay in your own shell. It was hard enough as it was, never mind that. On the flip side, which I guess, there's always good in everything. I learned to make by in almost every situation that there was, because you just get tossed in this place, tossed in that place. And it was all over the country, and the kids are very, very different. So you learn that you have to adapt.
Yeah.
Whether you want to or not, or you're just going to be by yourself forever. I was very shy until probably seventh, eighth grade. And my parents moved to a small town in Rhode Island where we lived for, I think, 5 or 6 years, which to us, that was a lifetime, so that's in my head, that will always be my home. Those are the people that, and it was at the right age too. I was junior high to high school. So that's a good age to have people that you need by your side. If it's not your family, my family wasn't on my side. So it was, those people to this day have no idea how important they are now to me,
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Why do you think that your mother was so rough on you, but not on your brother Danny?
I think, and I'm going to be really brutally honest with you here. She's a weak person. And if she had to make the choice, which obviously she did, she chose him, my father, or my stepfather, actually, over me. And that was Danny. That was my oldest brother, was the most important thing to him. He could do no wrong. So she just sided with him, not with, I don't think Danny in particularly, but with him. And she would do anything to keep him in the house. And I think once he passed away, and this is, I don't even know if this is probably happened after I ended the book, but she always has to have somebody by her side. Somebody has to be taking care of her. She doesn't take care of herself, whether it's my little brother or somebody, And everything's happening to her, not anybody else.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what's that like though? Like, did you find that after a while though, that like when you were out on your own, that if your mother, I don't know if she had tried to reach out to you when she needed someone because now, your stepfather was not there, did you find that you were just like, nah, I can't do that because I don't want to be
It took me a long time. When I met my husband, I actually, for the first time in my life, went to therapy. And I liked my therapist. I got along with him well. And I remember sitting in a session one day, and this was, I still talked to my mom and the whole thing, and she knew I was going to therapy. And he said, Christine, I have to ask you something. I said, okay. He said, I have never, he'd been a therapist for, decades. I've never been presented with this situation, and you're my patient. Patient is the right word. I'm not even sure. You're my patient, and I need to ask you your permission. He says, here's something really weird. Your mother called me the other day and she wants to see me. I said, that's weird. And I was I lived in Connecticut. She lived in Rhode Island, probably an hour plus drive. I said, that's odd. He goes, I think it's odd too. And he had, he knew everything at that point. And he said, this is up to you. What do you want to do? And I said, say yes, see what she says. And it was very, very, not to educate, it was everything I already knew. She went in to say why everything wasn't her fault and why there's no way anything could have happened, or she could have, all of that stuff. Short version of the story, it was so toxic and it's so bad to me. I said, this isn't going to help me any. This is going to be for the rest of my life, and woe is me on my mom. And it's horrible because your parents are the most important people in your life, and you're actually conditioned to think that. So it was a big decision. I made the decision to just separate, and it's probably the healthiest thing I ever did. So it's hard, but
well, I give you credit for that, because it's true that we are, growing up, we always think, that our parents are not necessarily God, but that, we work with them, we look at them, we think, wow, they're great. And no matter what they do, we think, that's how things are supposed to be, and our parents are so wonderful, until, sometimes we see other people's parents and families. And I'm like, wow, I was so wrong, Mine is like a circus.
Good point. Yeah, I think no matter who you are, and even like I write my book and I'll have people write to me and say, hey, this is what happened to me. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's so much worse than anything I've ever been through. And sometimes it's just one incident, or it's over a span of many, many years. And I'm thinking, how are you still alive? But they are. So no matter what, there's always something worse than what we're in, I think. Yeah, it's good or bad.
Can you tell us about the two men who did you so wrong, but also gave you the strength to grow?
Yeah. What do you mean, my stepfather and my uncle?
Yes.
Yeah. My stepfather, obviously, but he was so, I don't know. He didn't want me to be successful. He didn't want me to be able to stand on my own. He just wanted to bring me down. And I hated him so much that I refused to give in to that, because that was the only power that I had. Everything else he kind of had. I lived in their house. I was a child. I didn't want anybody to know anything was quote unquote wrong with me. So I just made it a mission in my life to grow up, be an adult, and take care of myself. And partly because they were just they were screw ups. My parents were just screw ups. We lost houses. We had no heat. You have no hot water. That's a horrible way to live. So all the things that they did taught me everything I didn't want to do. And that's a very valuable lesson. My uncle, different story. I loved him. He was one of the most important, and to this day is still one of the most important people in my life. But what I learned from him is money isn't the most important thing. Greed is a horrible thing to have. And trust is super important, no matter who you're with and who you're working with. And he broke all of those things. He hurt me very bad, but he taught me so many things that I used when I created Monster Mini Golf. And eventually, he passed away maybe 10 years or so ago. I was with him when he passed away. Never said he was sorry, but I was there. So it was a little bit different.
Yeah, because I was very like I was surprised in that section of the book, because your uncle seemed like he was going to go to bat for you and he was going to be there for you, and then in the end to see like that, such a turn by him, like that wasn't horrible. Anything that I was expecting.
It wasn't anything I was expecting. But living through that's probably one of the hardest. Even with everything I've been through, that hurt me more than anything else. And I think I already didn't trust people. And that's the first person I let in, like of that magnitude. And he just crushed me. But it made me decide, well, okay, I was with you side by side. We built this amazing business, even though it was a weird one. I'm eventually going to do it on my own. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just said, I'm going to do it on my own.
Yeah. And I think you did it quite well, because in terms, not only like were there all the different things that your parents didn't do, but you were helping them with their bills and paying their bills, and
that was ongoing.
Nothing for yourself.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people out there, nothing to do with child abuse, but you fall into that for whatever reason. Your parents become the weaker link in your life, and you feel obligated to support them, but there has to be a balance there somewhere. They can't drain you of everything, because it's just not fair. And a parent shouldn't do that to a real parent that really loves their child wouldn't let that happen on both sides.
Yes.
You can always help your parents, but
True. Like, I help my stepmom a lot, and she's 83.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, like, it was never a thing of my dad and my stepmom saying, well, come on, now that you're, 12 and you're living with us, cough something up. It was like, it was never like that,
And they shouldn't steal from you. They shouldn't take your money when you're not looking, or take something. But yeah.
Or your diary, for that matter.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
In chapter 1, on the first page, you start out with where you say, Christina, does daddy ever hurt you? The man was way up in the air, sitting behind a desk as high as the sky, wearing a black cape, holding a camera. I could feel myself fidgeting. Mom didn't tell me about these kinds of questions. Was I supposed to tell the truth? Was I supposed to say that my new daddy touched me in bad places? Or was I supposed to say what Mommy, the old lawyer guy in the suit, and Daddy had told me to say before we went to see the judge? Answering his questions was hard. Why was it so important for you to please your parents through that, even though you weren't happy?
I don't know what that is. That's still in me. I haven't been able to really balance that really well. But I think there's some people who could say, oh, I'm like that too. You want to be good. You don't want to be bad. You want to do what you're told. You want to be, you don't want to, I think more than anything else, I don't want to make any problems in anybody's life. So, especially with my parents, she had just gotten married to this guy. She was happy. We were living with my grandparents and she was always crying and yelling. And I just remember screaming all the time. And now she was as happy as could be. So was I going to be the person that's going to break all of this up? Even at that young age, I was like, no, she's going to hate me. So you just want to do what makes other people happy. Not that that's always right, obviously, but I still struggle with that.
Moving forward, how can we protect children going through the legal process?
Wow. I think the number one thing is that people are afraid to speak up and tell the truth. That's just, it's that simple. People would rather hide from it. And they, if they're confronted, they'll shy away from it. I think this, in this day and age, though, it's probably, we have more, I would say rules and regulations, but more ways that people can say, hey, this is happening without going right to the parent. I think teachers can now, go to the authorities and say, look, I think I have a situation here. And then it's up to the authorities to investigate. There's so much, and gosh, teachers are probably, to me, when I was growing up, my teachers were just, I looked up to them so much. I admired them. They get paid nothing compared to what they should get paid. And to add this burden onto them is insane, but they see so much. I bet you there's some teachers that know the children better than their parents do, because there's so many issues at home with parents. But if you see something, speak up, say something.
And I think too, I know for myself as a teacher, we get some kids in our class that come in, they're 3, 4, and 5, but they come in at 7:30 and they go home at 5:30, and we probably spend more time with them than their own parents do.
Yeah, and sometimes I think they're more honest with you than they are with their parents. With me, I was just, I looked up to them. I thought they were the good people. I didn't live with them, so I didn't really know them, but I lived with bad people. So you look up to somebody who's teaching you something. You're like, in an odd way, there's just a bunch of little superheroes running around that nobody knows about. But yeah.
What do you feel are some signs when a child is being coached?
You can read it in body language pretty quickly. I think that they'll yes you to death. I mean, I know everything that I did, it's where we when Monster Mini Golf first opened, I used to work in our first venue a lot. I don't anymore, obviously. Actually, we sold the company and we're retired, but I remember this one day, and it took my breath away, and I was waiting on a young little girl, and she was with her dad, and she was picking out prizes, because it's like Chuck E. Cheese, where you get to play games and you can pick out prizes after you're done. So she's picking out her prizes, and she did something, and I don't remember what it was, and she looked at me, and she was scared looking at him, and I lost my breath. I thought, holy cow, I think there's something wrong here. I didn't know her name. I didn't know his name. It's just customers that were in for an hour. And it scared me so much that I thought, wow, there's just so many of us out there. And I remember saying, I have to do something with that bug. It just took me 20 years, but it's, you see it. I see it now more in adults, because I never had children, not around a lot of children, but I see it out there in people my age. And it's kind of like you have this weird sixth sense, and you look at somebody and say, something happened. You don't know what it is, but years ago, something affected what they became, and sometimes it's sad. And sometimes you're proud that they made it.
On page 365, talk about a saying that you wrote, where you said, I just spent years allowing others to condition me into weakness.
Yeah. I was really mad at myself for that. I was weak. And again, it was I got really angry, and I'm like, I don't want to be weak anymore. I speak up pretty much about if something is wrong or something I think should be right. I'll speak very direct and very outspoken about it. And people hate that. They do not like to hear. I think in most cases, people want to hear what they want to hear. So, they'll ask you your opinion, but they're looking for what's going to make them feel the most comfortable, whether they're doing something wrong or trying to get away with something or taking a shortcut, whatever it is. And I probably up until a certain age, I said, you know what, I just want to make people feel good. And then one day I said, this is affecting me and I'm making those same people worse. I was enabling. So I just, those weird little light bulbs go off and you just say, I'm not doing it anymore. And I just chose not to.
There is a kind of a trendy new term out called gaslighting, which involves making someone question their own sanity, memory, or perception of reality. Over time, it can lead to confusion, loss of confidence, and self-esteem. Now, we all know someone who's been gaslighted, or we can see it in other people. We know it's wrong. Yet, I feel those of us who are survivors of sexual abuse, we do it to ourselves all the time without thinking twice about that. Why do you think that is?
I think it's like a safe haven. You're so conditioned to be in that situation that it becomes safe. And that's sad, but true.
Because I think too, like it is a terrible thing regardless, but like, when someone's being abused and when you go back on it and you think about it and you start talking about it, like people can tell you, oh, that didn't happen, did it? And then you start to question that, like, yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Oh God, I must have been crazy to think that happened. Or people ask you questions and you say, I don't remember. And your whole perception of was it real or was it not kind of gets changed. And then, as you get older, you get a little bit confused thinking about it. Like, yeah, no, I don't remember. I don't think that happened. And, but then it affects your self-esteem. It affects your confidence. And it's just, I don't know. I just see so many people who talk about, someone gaslighted me or my boyfriend's doing this. And people are quick to jump on and say, don't allow someone to do that. But then when something happens to us, all it takes is one look and we start to question, did that really happen? Is our memory correct? Are we going crazy? Is there something wrong with this? We kind of get a little bit confused and I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of a sad thing that we can see it for other people and, oh, that's bad, but for us, we don't see it and we kind of perpetuate that.
I think and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. So many people are telling you, no, that didn't happen. No, that didn't happen. You start to say, well, then am I the crazy one? And it's hard. It's hard to argue for your own self too, sometimes, especially if it's people close to you. But those are the people that you kind of have to separate from your life because you're more important to yourself than they are.
Yes.
And it's just hard to do it.
Did you find with any of your family or maybe some of your close friends that the more you shared, the more they were kind of like, are you sure? Or
my family, my family and my family, my siblings' children, which was mind-boggling to me, that they just said, nope, I've been told that you're just imagining. I'm going to generalize here on this because I want to. You're just imagining all of this, and you need help. And I thought, wow, you need help because you just have jumped off that little, whatever it is to believe what makes you feel best. Yet you've got cousins or other relatives that are affected by this too, but you don't want to deal with it, So it's I got to kind of be careful what I say here. It's hard. It's just hard when the people closest to you are the ones that don't believe you. It's a hard road to travel.
Memory has a big part to play in how people interpret past traumas. How did you learn to trust yourself and find the truth amongst that?
For me, I think I'm a workaholic. And I have been since I was very young, whether I realized it then or not. But if I was at work, I felt good. And when I felt good, it made me stronger. And I think that over the years, my career, whether, I mean, long before Monster Mini Golf, those people, if you're working somewhere and you're doing a good job and you're getting a promotion, or you're, you just feel good around you, that gave me the strength to be a better person on the inside that I knew I wasn't. So but you have to, I think that there has to be strength from somewhere. And some of these people that are out there, they don't have, they're looking at their lives and there's no strength around them. And that's, I think, sometimes the hardest point is, where do I find that one place that I can grab onto and hold that handle that's going to hold me up? And for me, it was work.
Now that you're retired, though, do you still kind of find like you need to be busy, or you have to?
Well, yes and no. I'm you get to, I'm almost 60, I'll be 60 next year. So you get tired, you actually get physically tired. But we sold Monster Mini Golf this past January. That was our franchise and all the chain of Monster Mini Golf units. But we kept the Las Vegas location. So we've got 2 locations in Las Vegas. We've got a Kiss, they're like the rock band Kiss themed Monster Mini Golf, but it's Kiss here. So it's Kiss World. And then we have a Twilight Zone at another casino in Las Vegas. So we've got those 2. But aside from that, somehow, when we opened the Kiss venue, I became good business friends with Gene Simmons from Kiss. Like that guy, crazy guy, good crazy. But so I have been working side by side with him over the last 10 years. That man is 73 years old. They're on their last tour and he does not slow down. We do a lot together. So he's kept me very, very busy. I'm hoping that next year he won't be quite as busy. So he is, and I've never said this, he is to me like my uncle, but he hasn't done what my uncle did. So it's a different relationship. He's special in my life. He's tough. He's very hard, but he keeps me going, I guess. I don't know.
Because I find that amazing. Like, for him at 75, like still performing, people still, like when his music comes on the radio, I know his music, and I'm like, oh, and you sing along to the songs, and you always hear, at least with a lot of groups now, they're saying, this is our goodbye tour. This is our last tour. But
it's so many 70s groups, right? Yeah.
Yes. And I think it was someone from the Eagles that had said, even though it's like the last goodbye tour or whatever, they said, we're really not going to stop touring. They said, because when they look at a lot of famous people who stopped working or stopped touring, he's like, they're so sad. He's like, I don't become like that. So we're really never, ever going to stop.
Yep. So Kiss, they're on their last tour. It ends December 2nd. So my husband and I leave on Thanksgiving Day to go back out and join them on tour, because we work with Gene on tour. And then once they're done, they take a day off. Gene takes a day off. And then we have a 3-day Gene Simmons event in New York City at the studio where they first started recording. So Gene already is onto his next life. Like he's already bounced off of that. So he's just, you're right. He's just one of those guys that as long as he keeps going, he's going, he believes he's immortal. So we'll see how that works out, but because he might be right. Who knows?
True. But I just find that very amazing. And what a person to have in your life, as you get older, to set that example and to kind of raise that bar of, how life just doesn't have to end.
No,
there's so many good things out there.
Yep. And he's the king of, to coin the phrase, there's no crying in baseball. He's the king of that. So you can start to feel bad. And he's just going to say, you keep on going. You got to keep on going. There's worse people, worse things happening in the world. Shake it off. So, yeah.
Yes. Towards the end of your book, you make a powerful statement. And I love this statement. It says, we are born with 0 life experience, yet we're immediately cast as decision makers. How do you feel this statement applies to you?
You mean now or then?
Or then.
As a child, it was a lot. What was happening to me in my life, those were adult things, not 4-year-old or 5-year-old, gosh, any, adolescent aged decisions to have to make. And it's, you get mad I'm like, how am I supposed to make all these decisions? I don't know any better. But you do make them because you have no choice. So you go through an angry phase, most of us do, where I was mad that my decision was to make everybody else happy, to shut up and just deal with it and make my parents happy, because your parents are the most important family. You're told is the most important thing in the world. So we could either have family, or my decision, the right one, which was I should have spoken up or did many things, would have destroyed all of that. So I could either shut up and make everybody happy and do what I've been told is right, or I can break it all to pieces and end up in a home, in an orphanage or a group home. For that gets scary too as you get older.
Yeah.
And you already know where you live. You know you're surviving where you live. You know how to survive where you live, whether it's good or bad. You know how to do it. But the other choice was end up in a group home or with some other family. That was more terrifying to me because I already learned how to do what I was doing.
So it would be like a new set of rules or new things.
Yeah, you didn't
to
know,
learn.
and you're a kid. You're scared. Everything else is worse. It's, for some people, I think, it's weird because some kids say everything else is better. Like they're always like every other family must be the Brady, well, to me, the Brady Bunch,
Yeah.
And I didn't, even though I wanted that and I wished all of that was true, I never believed it. I always thought it was, what if it's worse? And that was more terrifying to me.
You talk about evolving into a society where children who never had a voice before now have the loudest voice. What are some of the resources we have out now that have helped fuel this?
Well, you, for one, I'm talking to you, which never existed before. And I think, to me, it's important. We have social media, which is good and bad, but there's a lot of good in social media. Podcasting is wonderful. Just there's so many outlets and so many voices to be heard in so many places. That's the good side of technology. Also the bad side in a lot of ways, but use it for what it's good for. Get your word out there, get the story out there, because you never know who is listening to it. You could help somebody, you could get, somebody's listening, you could take it to the next level. I just happen to be able to be okay with speaking about it. And there's so many people that aren't, that now you feel, well, I have a job to do. If I can do this and so many of us can't, then you kind of got to step up and start talking about it.
And two, one thing I wanted to ask you was, like, you had mentioned in the book that when you were younger, that it was much easier being, talking to adults and talking to older people, and it was a little bit harder to relate to people your age. Did you find that as you got older and you had more life experiences, that became easier, or did it become harder for you to
to be with younger kids?
Yeah, or just people your own age, or were you still just more comfortable talking?
Took me a long time. I would say, even now, I think if I'm surrounded by, I probably have both now. You get to a certain point where you have no choice. You're old. But most of the people that I'm with are probably my age or older. I'd say up until the last 10 years, yeah, always older people. For me, and it's probably a sense of insecurity or security, not sure which depending on the day, I like to be around people that know more than me. I enjoy that. Know more doesn't mean that you're book smart. Know more. Sometimes it's life experience more. It could be any experience. It doesn't matter. Artists. I just like being around people that will teach you things that you might need someday in life.
And I think that's important too, and maybe we get a little more comfortable as we get older, and we kind of know more of our place in space, as I call it. So
yeah,
being with people our own age, it's kind of like they're a lot different than they might have been when we were 4, 12, 13.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's sort of a bit, so you kind of feel like, all right, everything is pretty much above board as you get older, and you can kind of suck and see what people are like, and so you know what to expect. And all right, these people are going to be good, so I can, learn something from them, hang out with them, bring them into my pack in a sense. But when you're younger, you know, you kind of think you know people, and then people change. And it's just, I think as you get older, people that are older are just, you know, what you see is what you're going to get. So
Yeah.
you don't have to wonder, like, you know,
Yeah.
there's some hidden agenda there or something.
You know, it's funny. I say this a lot to myself, because people will say, "Hey, do you want to do this?" Or how about, I don't know, whatever it is. And where 10 or 20 years ago, I would jump at the chance to do something new. Now I say, I don't have anything to prove anymore. I am who I am. I'm happy with who I am. I don't have that like sense of urgency to prove this or prove that. And that is, to me, probably the biggest relief and one of the coolest things about being, you know, almost 60. You know, it feels good to know who you are. It took 60 years to figure it out, but but it feels good once you get there. You know, you don't look good, but you feel good.
Well, I must say, you do look amazing, though. And I never would have thought 60, you know.
Oh, thank you.
I thought you were younger than me. So I'm
Having a
like,
good day, I think, is really more. You should see me on a rough day.
throughout your book, you take us on a pretty wild relationship ride. Out of all the men you had dated, what made Patrick the one?
I think because he confronted me. He was very he has like no boundaries, none, at the beginning, and it was really scaring, and it was very weird to me. And I went into that relationship, not a relationship. I had no intention of relationship. I was happy what I was doing. I was working. I loved it. I liked the people I was working with. And for me, he was just some guy I was going to see once in a while and have fun. That was in my head exactly what I thought about that whole thing. So I think I got blindsided a little bit, which was good, because if I had, you know, prepared myself, I would have ran away, because that's who I am. But when he confronted me, I don't know if it was timing or I had just had enough of not speaking up. And he just asked me and I answered him. And I was like, okay, this is weird. And that's, I think, you know, opened a whole different door for an actual real relationship, which I probably never had.
And it seemed like, too, he was open to your, from what you said in the book, he was open to your responses. He didn't run away either.
No, he didn't. No. As a matter of fact, he listened to all of it. He's the one that got me into therapy, made me go to therapy, and I didn't want to, but once I was there, it was fine. So yeah, it was, we're very, very different people, but, and a lot alike at the same time, but yeah.
If someone wanted to go out there and they wanted to purchase your book, where would they go to purchase your book?
They can go to my own website, which is 123christinav.com, or amazon.com has paperback, hardcover. And then as of December 5th, Podium will release the audio version of the book. You can buy it on Amazon, or you can buy it direct through Podium. And I think it's gonna be available on iTunes too, early next year.
Now,
So, yeah.
with the audio version of your book, will that be you reading the story yourself?
I tried. I really, really wanted to, and I could not get through. I think it's chapter 7 or 8. I don't remember what chapter it is. I couldn't get through the scene with my brother and my father. I couldn't do it. I didn't have the ability. I was so mad at myself, and I wasted almost a year trying to record it myself. And the older I got in the book, the harder it was to read it or to voice it. I couldn't do it. I'm not okay. I'm really mad that I failed at that, because I would have loved to.
I think that, you know, that was like a very like powerful point in the book, because it was something that just happened, but it didn't just happen, and it was happening to you, and then how you were kind of just blanked it out, or, you know, went somewhere else, and then, you know, afterwards it was, you know, like, wow, that couldn't have possibly have happened. And it's, you know, to me, it's just so mind-boggling that, you know, your stepdad would actually be teaching your son things as if that was okay, that was acceptable. But yet, you know, teachers and people would say, you know, there's something wrong with him, he needs help, he needs counseling. And he never got it. And they just said, oh no, you know, it's not him, it's the teachers, it's the, the other people.
And you, there's I mean, I think there's a lot more on TV now because there's so many different types of ways you can watch TV, all the streaming devices, and there's a lot of true life stories out there now. So there's a lot more than there used to be. And some of them I'll watch, some of them I don't watch, but you see the pattern and you see that this is happening, didn't just happen in our house. This happens, unfortunately, more than everybody, wants to believe. And if all the serial killers that are out there, when it comes down to it, usually he had a pretty bad childhood.
Yeah.
Usually that's what it comes down to. I'm like, how is no one wants to deal with this? No one wants to tackle this. Everybody's afraid to. And I don't have an answer for it. It's annoying.
Yeah, I honestly don't have an answer either, but when you think I think especially lately, when you think you've heard the worst or seen the
Yes.
worst and how these people have been failed, you hear something, a week later that's far worse, where
Yes.
nobody was there to help them.
Yep. It's just, and it's still once in a while it hits you. This is a human being that's doing this to somebody else. These are human beings. And, it goes back, you had said, do you have more friends now? And as you're older, to this day, I have a very, very small circle of friends. I'm just, I stay very, I'm social media is fun, which is a great outlet. My work, I'm around just an insane amount of people, but when I'm home, I'm in, right? We don't go out a lot, and we, enjoy once in a while, but I'm not a social person where I have to be around a lot of my friends. I probably on one hand with my closest people. Yeah.
And do you find that's a good thing though? That's kind of, or I guess it would be a good thing because it gives you that downtime to kind of
Yes, that's good.
get away from all that, the different, things
a lot out there
expect of you and want you to be, or the questions, and you can kind of come home and just be you and not have to perform.
Yeah. Yep. Some people have to be around people all the time, just the way they are. And others are fine just being quiet. And when I'm home, I'm a quiet person. And when I'm out there, I'm doing my job.
Yeah.
You're performing, really. Yeah.
Well, in closing with us, what words of encouragement can you leave others to help them persevere?
If you're the kind of person that can't talk about something like this, then at least know that you're not alone. I think people feel like they're alone. I did for a long time. I honestly had no idea that this was happening, rapidly. So much. It's terrible. And try to make yourself talk about it. Try to get to somebody who can listen to you, because that does make all the difference in the world. It doesn't have to be a therapist, just somebody who can listen so that you can get it out, because that's a lot to keep pent up for a long time. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Christina. My last and final question for you is, what do you feel the future holds for Christina?
It's funny, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm hoping less than more. I don't know. I think I have to get past maybe this year and see, let some things calm down, let work calm down, and see, whether I'd like to do something else or do nothing else. I don't know. I'm just being honest with you.
Do you have like a bucket list where you kind of cross things off and say, these are the things I'm going to do? And
we've done a lot in our life. When you build a business, it's a lot. You've done a lot in your life. We've seen a lot because we've traveled a lot because of the business and because of working with KISS. So we've accomplished a lot. I think there are some things I'd like to do, but I think a lot of it is it's art related stuff that I want to do for myself. Maybe I think my bucket list is to spend more time with me. And that does sound selfish or weird, but I don't do that. I'm always doing something. So when I'm home, it's just like, wow, this is really cool. And probably my biggest bucket list is to do public speaking on this subject. That's what I would like to do.
Well, I definitely think that you'd be phenomenal at that. You were phenomenal today, and the world really needs more people to speak out who know what they're talking about and who can help, push this forward. And this is not something that people just, wake up one day and they're over it. It's not something they get over. And it takes a
Ever.
long time
Yeah.
for anyone who's suffered that to get over it. So I think speaking about it and being out there and letting other people know that, you know, you're championing for them, I think
Yeah.
that's, you know, very important.
Thank you. I got a long time ago, I don't even remember how many years ago, I got a fortune in a fortune cookie, which sounds silly, and I kept it for years and years. I don't know where it is now. And it says, real courage begins when the outcome is uncertain. And I thought, oh, that's really, really important. That's a great statement to make, because I think you spend so much time afraid to take a step, whether it's to go to a new job or just do anything else. People don't like change. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to start doing things that I'm not sure what's on the other side. And it makes a big difference.
Definitely. Do you ever see yourself maybe writing another book?
Maybe. You have to be in that mode. You have to, like, I have to be in it to write, you know. My husband said he saw the back of my head for 6 months when I wrote the book. That's all he saw. If I was in the right frame of mind and I had a reason to write. So it's weird that I just sat with my agent for the podium books, and she asked me the same question. She goes, could you write another book? And I said, well, I have to have something good to write about. You know, you have to have a reason to write, because people should want to read it and give it to somebody else. Otherwise, you're just writing a book, you know. So I don't know yet.
But I think you have a lot that you could write about, because not just your success, but how you did it, like how you got to a point of, like, from working at the camera store now to having 30 of your own businesses that you were running, and you know, everything that you did, it didn't seem like, you know, it was the end. There was always more, and you were learning more. And I think you have a valuable information that maybe other people could learn from, on how, gee, I could do that too. Not necessarily have 30 businesses, but how to, you know, still be able to have to do the work they love and love the work that they do.
You're right. That's yeah, and what it took to get there and what you have to sacrifice, you know, and expect or not expect, which was, you know, a lot of learning curve, we'll say, for a short way to say that. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Christina, for joining us and for sharing your powerful story. And for anyone who picks up this podcast and decides to watch it later, please purchase her book. It's very important. It at times, yes, it will be a hard read, but you really want to get through the book and get to the end. And there is such great perseverance and triumph. And so thank you, Christina, you know, for being a voice, you know, for us and for those, you know, that don't have a voice. And
thanks for having me, Laura.
So thank you very much. And we enjoy seeing what the future has to hold for you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Have a great night.
All right. Thank you. You too.